What is going on YouTube? Welcome back to A Therapeutic Edge. Today on the table in front of us is the CJRB Mangrove. Now I've had this thing for a while. It was dropped off to me by Artisan, so this is a loaner, but I've been carrying it and using it, and I am just 100% behind this particular new CJRB. Now these have been out, I think, for a month or so. This one is just, a lot of new models have been out, I should say, and this one is just really interesting. The blade shape on this alone makes it one of my all-time favorite EDC budget knives. I love this blade. I just do. For a daily worker, that shape is just about unbeatable. Now, it's not hollow ground. It is a flat grind. It does have a reasonably thick edge, but they have gotten very good at putting a very sharp edge on these things. And I got to tell you, their D2 is remarkable. Look, my daily use is not hard use, but I've never even had to strop this thing. And I've cut a ton of cardboard and packages and tape, and you name it, in your daily sort of use. And I have done it with this knife. And the edge has held up beautifully. The G10 on this thing is milled in such a way, it's kind of funky, I admit that, but in hand, it is very, very comfortable, and it's got this great choil, so you can either choke up this way and do really good push cuts, or if you want to stay back a little bit from the blade, it's just as equally good to do it this way. Now, I do want to point out, because of the way it comes around the belly and kind of comes back down, the blade narrows towards the choil, you do have to be really aware of that when you're doing push cuts, or you will end up in the choil. That happened to me a couple of times. Of course, if you move your finger forward, your finger acts as a guide, you don't have that problem. For draw cuts, the way this thing is designed, it does have a really nice swedge up here at the tip, but it's not sharp. So for draw cuts, it is very good. And it does have a very nice and robust tip. It's not, razor blade thin. So you don't have to worry about the tip coming off or bending. Of course, don't pry with your knives. It is on ball bearings, and so the action, which is CJRB's thing, is super good. Access to the lock bar on this liner lock is very good, although it is smooth. I would have liked to see a little jimping there. It gives you plenty of purchase, so I don't miss it, and I don't think you would either. It has a nice stamp steel deep carry clip that is a little bit away from the end of the knife because they made room for a lanyard hole. I don't lanyard, so I would have preferred if the clip was a little higher, but a lot of people do, so that makes sense, and you don't get that much knife sticking out just the same. Because of the way this handle is shaped, I thought at first that there'd be a little wiggle when you're holding on to it tight, but they did leave a little bit of a swell down here that really locks it in towards the pinky, and so, nope, it just locks in. Of course, there is no blade play or lock rock on this thing. It is really well made. Now, this one has been to shows. It's been around for a while, and the blade is still dead center. That is build quality, and that is something that CJRB brings to the table for sure. Let's take a look at the specs just so we know what we're talking about here. Now, this knife is 1 to 3 and a little tiny bit inches of cutting surface on the D2 blade. Overall blade is 1 to 3.5 inches long. Overall knife is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.25 inches long. And on the grip, which is just behind the flipper, to the very end of the knife, you get 1, 2, 3, just a little over 4 inches. So blade to handle ratio on this is very nice. You get a little more tail because of this point back here. So it is a little handle heavy, but balance-wise, it's right where you want it to be. I like budget knives. I just do. My collection, of course, runs towards sort of ridiculous knives, but every once in a while, and lately it's been a lot CJRB, someone brings forward a budget knife with a design that is just, well, it's not only interesting, but it's incredibly useful. And the Mangrove here is just that. It is a really good, it's a $35 or $40 knife that has never let me down and continues to serve me every time I put it in my pocket. And that matters. It really does. Let's do a size comparison so we know where we are in the scheme of things. I know you guys are probably getting tired of this. I'll find some other size comparison knives down the road a little bit. Here it is. Here's our old friend, the Rat Model 1. And as you can see, the Rat 1 is longer and offers just a little more cutting. The Mangrove is a smaller knife by comparison. Here's our friend, the Rat Model 2, and we know, of course, that the Mangrove is going to be considerably larger than this. But the Mangrove is a good medium-sized knife. It really is. It's narrow enough through the handle. Well, let's find out where we are with that. We are in inches, so that's good. At the thickest part of the handle, we are under a 1/2 inch, which is very, very nice. And the D2 blade stock, now we got to put this to the right thing. The D2 blade stock on this is 3 1/3 millimeter, 3.3 millimeters. So it's not super fat. It does come to a relatively nice edge. Like I said, it's not a razor blade, but it does come to a nice edge. You know, this is kind of a funky looking knife. And I'm glad about it because, as I've said for a number of my reviews for knives like this, it's a funky looking knife that manages not to give up any of its functionality. It's got some jimping on the flipper. I wish there was a little jimping back here. It is a little slick, but because of the way that it's shaped, as you can see, it's got a nice bow to it. It does give you a nice place to plant your thumb. CJRB continues to knock it out of the park as far as I'm concerned. Of course, the Centros from last year remains one of my favorite knives. This has rapidly joined the Centros' ranks as an excellent option for budget knives. And they did it with a ton of style. It doesn't look like every other knife. And yet again, it manages to be very, very useful. I really like this thing. Now, of course, I wouldn't choose one in green, but they do come in many colors. I would, of course, want one that was in black G10. I do love the open construction. Now, considering this is built like a work knife, the fact that it has no backspacer and is all open, it means one of two things. It does mean that stuff will get in easier, but by the same token, it also means that you're going to be able to clean it out easier, and that matters, especially when you're running on bearings. I love that the liners are nested. As you can see, when the liner lock comes out, it settles in underneath the scales, and on this side, it is completely buried. I do notice that this is not milled out. Now, I don't have my scale handy today, but I can tell you that even though it's not milled, it's not heavy by comparison to many knives. Oops, excuse me. By comparison to many knives. For instance, the Rat Model 1 here is a lot heavier. If you're looking for an interesting knife with a wonderful blade shape, God, that is so good. That will hold your interest not just as a user, but as maybe a collector, that also works exceptionally well, the CJRB Mangrove is a really good choice. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video on your way out. It does help the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I'd love to have you here on a regular basis. We'll see you next time.